All right. Thanks everybody for joining, for taking time out of your Wednesday morning here in the holiday season. I'm sure everyone's busy, kind of closing out the year. So we appreciate your presence here today. So yeah, I'm Michael Sothin. So if you couldn't tell by my accent, I'm originally American, but I'm based in not so sunny today, Lisbon, Portugal. Been working in field service in various forms for about 12 years. So originally I was the executive assistant of a chairman of one of China's largest express delivery services. So working in express delivery initially. And then from there, started a company related to event and nightlife management using mobile devices to book tables and control alcohol distribution and talent management. And then from there, eventually worked in security systems and access control for critical infrastructure, especially in the telecom space. And eventually worked my way to the US, where I founded with some friends a startup related to managing commercial HVAC systems, especially the air filtration, procurement, and installation cycle using mobile devices. And eventually all the way here to Lisbon, Portugal, where I had a company related to the storage and transport of luggage for tourists. And then in the past year and a half of my life, happily at Zinier, overseeing our sales here for Europe. So that's a little bit about me. Domingo, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Well, I'm a solution architect. My role is to understand and pain points so that we can see how Senior can digitize and automate and optimize their processes.
All right, so our agenda for today is we're going to just touch on kind of what is mobile field service, and then what are some of the mobile features that you should look for in best utilizing mobile devices to empower your field teams and enhance your visibility into field service. And then we'll give a demo of our specific solution with Zinier so you can see a little bit how these things could be utilized in everyday practice. Okay, so mobile field service. All right. Now, if we look at, this is, again, our fourth and final webinar in a series of four. So we've kind of touched on this value chain slide in all of our webinars. We started out looking at just AI and automation at a high level, how it could be applied to field service. Then we got a little bit deeper into the metrics that you might want to be tracking and how to kind of, move the dial on those key metrics. And then last week, we got even deeper still. Specifically, we deep dived into scheduling and dispatching. So kind of early in the value chain here, which focuses more on the back office and your coordinators team, and how to make sure that your technicians are being scheduled correctly, arriving on site with the right information, et cetera. Now we're going to take it onto the other side of kind of the equation here. So your frontline people, we're going to focus on the technicians themselves today, and kind of see that whole flow of how do they collect the information, how are they dispatched, how do they execute the service, how is that real-time task data being pushed back to your back office, and how are jobs being closed out and reported. So we're going to focus on kind of this bottom piece here of the value chain, which really is the heart of field service. So everything from what we call pre-service, which is making sure that you know what are the required parts, inventory, materials to execute a job correctly, and making sure you have visibility into the asset history of the assets you'll be working on, to the actual execution itself. So this is often through checklists and different types of mobile workflows where you can collect and upload different pieces of data, to the actual reporting, which often we call the closeout process or a closeout package, which is how to consolidate all of that data collected real time in the field and as seamlessly as possible push that back to the back office to verify, preferably while your technicians are still on site. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, if we kind of back it up a bit, what are the all too common headaches around field service execution? So we can kind of quickly go through the list here. So inconsistent quality of work across field teams, right? So, one team's working one way, another team's working a different way. Somebody says the job is done, but what done means to one tech is different to another tech. What in progress means to one tech is different to another tech, right? Time wasted on calls to the back office. So what you don't want is a technician not being properly empowered to do his job, needing to call to verify data with the back office. Maybe he has to wait to get through. The person that picks up the phone has to go through a siloed system, find that data, call the person back, then he doesn't have a signal. And you get this whole back and forth juggling of just trying to get basic information about location or asset history or tools, et cetera. Work fraud. So this is the idea of, if somebody saying they're on a job site and they've checked in, but they're actually still sitting at home, having a drink. Low adoption of field service apps. So this is more high level. It's about change management and kind of the resistance to using technology. Maybe your technicians are a bit distrustworthy, thinking, am I being tracked? Why do I want to use this? Leave me alone. Also, difficulty in using the apps. So these two go hand in hand. Maybe they're happy to use it, but they're no longer happy to use it because when they open it up, it's too slow. The button's not working. They can't figure it out, and it just becomes frustrating, right? Then lack of visibility into what's actually going on. So, when something's in progress, what does that mean? Where are you in terms of the progress? Is the task going to overrun? And then too much time spent manually entering data to close out jobs. So, there's not a lot of point in empowering your field force with technology if after they use that technology, they still have to manually go back and upload a bunch of data on a laptop and spend 45 minutes in their van, right? So these are some of the things we're trying to overcome. And the ideal outcome, as you can see here, is ensure that all teams, so whether they're outsourced, temporary workforce, or your in-house people, are empowered with standardized workflows, best operating practices, right? To maintain quality across the organization. Minimize calls to the back office, capture task data as it's coming in the field, as close to real time as possible, and make sure that's being transferred back to your back office and your HQ. Ensure high user adoption to gain increased productivity. And so we'll touch on that later, which a lot of that has to do with the UI and UX of how these tools are actually designed. And then the ability to update, modify, change workflows in real time. So if a technician runs into a problem on site and all of a sudden there's a need for corrective maintenance, when that person might have been there for a preventative maintenance, they can actually initiate that workflow, conduct that, and then come back to where they left off in the original preventative maintenance workflow that they came there for. All right, so what is mobile field service? Well, our definition from Zinier would be, it really means a natively built, meaning that it's seamless, that it's fluid, that it looks nice, good resolution across devices, mobile application, which is seamless and intuitive. So it's really about being seamless, creating kind of an avenue of communication and information throughout the entire service delivery process, from that pre-service part of the value chain to the closeout process afterwards, right? And it needs to be designed, again, with the technician in mind. A lot of these people, they have big thumbs, they might have gloves on, it might be raining outside, or it's super sunny and it's reflecting off the screen. What you don't want is unclear caution on pages. You don't want small buttons. A lot of companies, they build using kind of monolithic solutions that were designed for the web. They were not designed for mobile. They're not mobile first. And so then they try to do things like building kind of a responsive web page that can then be displayed in an application, but you end up with buttons that aren't the right size. You have URLs popping up. You open a screen, and then the screen is, a screen within a screen that's kind of in the corner of your mobile app display, and it's very hard to press. These things frustrate technicians, and they're not, a tailwind helping them work more efficiently. They're actually a headwind. So it's very important that you have something that's natively built, that's intuitive, clear calls to action, good speed, etc. So, okay, and what are kind of the common mobile field service use cases? The one I wanted to touch on here that's interesting is really new hire ramp up. So as we're seeing more and more, especially like EPCs, who we work with a lot, so kind of like specialty contractors and construction companies, they're gravitating towards kind of the Uberization of their workforce, which means also temporary workforces, a more fluid workforce, right? You're also seeing this kind of handover from the older generation to kind of the millennial workforce, and they work in different ways. They're much more accustomed to utilizing technology, shorter attention spans. But the thing is, how do you get that knowledge transfer from your new or your fluid kind of temporary workforce from your veterans? How do you ensure that the guy that you just brought on 2 weeks ago is armored with the same kind of knowledge and ability to achieve on a job site as the person that's been working on that site for the past 8 years, right? And so this becomes easy to do when you have standardized workflows across your organization. All right, so now we'll get a little bit deeper into actual mobile features. So this is just kind of giving a screenshot of sort of a workflow as it would be captured within Zinier's mobile apps. So what we're talking about here is really building standardized workflows. The idea is that through a platform, you can configure workflows in each node in that workflow, what you specifically want on each screen, what kind of data you have to capture, if there's a customer sign off, before and after photos, etc. But the idea is to basically build your standard operating procedures. and to ingrain kind of best practices across different teams, across different business units, across different geographies, and the ability to quickly modify those if need be. If all of a sudden COVID's happening and there's a requirement for taking a selfie to show your PPE gear is on, you can quickly add that to the workflow, and your technicians don't even need to re-download or reinstall anything on the application. Just next time they open that type of workflow, that additional step will now be in there. So again, this is helping drive best practices across the organization. And there's lots of other little details that should be in there. So for instance, the ability to upload different types of media and push that back, but then also the ability to do what we call deferred media upload, which means that things like the most critical task details, which are often just captured as text, can be pushed back to the server first instead of those heavy media files. Because what you don't want is force your technicians to sit waiting around to transfer information to the back office because maybe they only have an edge connection or a 3G connection. You want to get that critical task data pushed back first so it can be verified by your back office. And then when you have connectivity, you can push those heavier media files, right? So all of these things need to be taken in mind, but this is just giving an idea of the power of having standardized workflows across your organization. Now, kind of touching on what I was just saying, it's also about seamless online and offline behavior of the mobile app. So for instance, with Zinier, it's important that we built our mobile app with online and offline mode in mind. If you design a mobile app at the architecture level and don't take into consideration offline mode, it's very hard, if not impossible, to add it in later without completely rebuilding the entire system. So this is important because obviously, if you take, for instance, the telecom space, a lot of times when you're working on a site for either a new build or for corrective maintenance when the site's gone down, what that means is there's no signal, especially if it's a backhaul site in a remote area, because that site itself is the signal, right? So when you're working there, if you don't have network, you still need the ability to go through a workflow to capture all that data, to store it locally. And then as soon as you're back on a network, whether it's 4G or Wi-Fi, that data captured locally on your device can then be pushed back to the cloud, right? And it also means that when your technicians are receiving their tasks at the beginning of the day, there's not the need for them to remember to be on a stable network to then download everything manually. It will automatically be downloaded when they're on a network, so that when they arrive on site, their workflow's there, it's loaded. They don't have to think, oh shoot, I forgot to download the workflow, and now I'm here on site with no network. I have to drive back, right? You don't want that to happen. So it's important to have this kind of seamless online and offline behavior. Now, if we go a little bit deeper into kind of like features and functionality, it's also important to have a way to check in and check out. So at Zinier, we use geofence-based check-ins, meaning that you can actually configure in our platform the radius, whether it's 50 meters, a kilometer around a job site, and the technician will only be able to actually initiate that workflow and start their job when they're within that geofence, right? So again, it's not to say that you shouldn't trust your workforce, but when you have 500 or 5,000 techs, it's natural that there might be one or two bad apples, and you don't want that making the whole bunch rotten, right? So it's better just to have these kind of ingrained practices that ensure that this type of fraud can't happen, and it just becomes part of the technician's normal workday. They don't think anything about it. The back office can also relax, and they know that there's no job fraud being committed. But also, on a more positive note, it also is just a way to ensure the time stamping of when you start a job in terms of SLA compliance. So it's easy to avoid SLA violations when you know your technician actually is there on site every day. All right, so then if we go into things like incident reporting, so another thing that's interesting about having the ability to chain workflows together and having an event-driven architecture is you can do things such as taking report of new things that happen when you're on site. For instance, if you were conducting preventative maintenance, or no, let's say maybe you were installing server racks, or maybe checking something on a BTS. And so you're there for something more network quality related. You might be an RF engineer. You're not really related to like things like the HVAC system and air filters. But if you notice that maybe that BTS seems to be hot and it's overheating, and you can see the temperature threshold is going up, you might notice that the filter was clogged. So what you can do is you can capture that data, and then you could actually, the next time a technician goes to that site, it can be noted with the asset, and they know to bring a filter and to actually initiate that task. Or if you happen to have the filter with you in your van, you could actually initiate that task while you're on site, install the filter, and then go back to your original work on the BTS, right? But you could also discontinue a task, for instance, if there's a blocking issue. That means it can't be resolved. Your web coordinators will see that right away, and then they can quickly reschedule the task for the next day. So this is just showing a little more detail about what I just said about the ability to quickly initiate a corrective maintenance workflow during a different type of workflow, right? So this is just kind of showing what that would look like in our app. And this is a little more detailed. So now you can actually see the ability to capture like a before photo and after photo. And then if you wanted to add some type of asset or install an antenna, and then this is getting pushed back to the web application. So your coordinators can actually see what types of tasks are now pending related to that job, and that there was an additional asset that was installed. They can check it, they can approve it, and be notified in either real time or close to real time. Now, also the ability to conduct multi-day tasks, right? So, not every type of job is intraday. You might have, longer kind of civil work on a site. You might be building new sites. It might be a multi-day installation where you have a crew. So you want the ability to, first of all, have your supervisor, your team lead, be empowered to check in and check out his different crew members with the time and attendance data. What time did they arrive? So hours billable, if people are going into overtime, if a job might be overrunning. So this goes back into that idea that, we work with a lot of large companies that they know when a task was assigned, they know when a task has been completed, but in between, it's basically just in progress. And in progress really is not a very powerful piece of data, right? Is it overrunning? Are all of your technicians there? Do they have the right parts in inventory? Have you run into a snag? Do you need to send somebody else? It's important to have that, as granular of a view as possible, so that can go back into your project management system and your Gantt charts, and you can see, okay, who's on site? Is it overrunning? What was completed today? How much am I going to have to pay, etc. All right, and then going a little bit more into features again. So this is showing screenshots of what hypothetically would be a use case for like a hotel or Airbnb management type of company. So basically cleaning staff, right? So this is showing a use case where you would need a before and after photo to verify that a place is clean and ready for the next occupant to come in. So you want the ability to also annotate on those photos, to leave notes on those photos. But what's really interesting is the watermarking. So as you can see here, you can see the name of the engineer, which in this demo is me, the date and time, also the task number, which can be correlated back to the work order in the system, as well as the geo data, right? So the GPS data. This way you can ensure that it's not a stock photo or any other type of fraud is being committed. And then another thing that's really important that sometimes is not touched on is it's not just about a mobile app. A mobile app is never just a mobile app, right? There's an entire backend infrastructure powering it. You have to think about things like DevOps and availability and speed. And it's important that when you have a platform and you build a solution on top of an underlying platform, that your mobile app and your web app share a lot of the same underlying architecture and they can work together seamlessly. Because what's critical is that when task data changes at the back office, that's quickly pushed to the mobile app, or when data is captured in real time on site, that's also being quickly transferred back to the web app, and you can see things like task progress, changes in inventory, hours billable, etc. And then that in turn from Zinier could be integrated into an ERP system, into an EAM system like IBM Maximo, your CRM, etc. All right, so a few other things just to briefly touch on. So mobile attendance management. So we kind of already touched on the idea of roll call and managing your crews. But some other interesting things are in-app messaging. So at Zinier, we've tried to not overly focus on things like AR and messaging and all this real-time communication, because we know that the point is to build workflows that are optimal to the point that it empowers your technician to go and do his job with minimal intervention. We have one client that works in the telecom space in Europe, and they actually have a dedicated field technician per site. So that technician is an expert on that site. And of course, there's still room for instance for our solution when that technician cannot sign in, he's not available for the day. So then who is the next best technician to assign to? And this is where scheduling, automation, and AI comes in. But the idea is that you don't want to disempower that technician. You don't want to force that person to constantly being inundated with messages and video calls, because that technician knows what he or she is doing. You just want to have optimal standardized workflows that allow your back office to gain visibility when they need to, that the task has been completed. But if they do happen to run into a snag, there is the capacity to enter into a seamless in-app chat functionality, or to have an integration, for instance, with Zoom and actually enter into a video call as well. So it's important to have the capacity to do these things, but to not necessarily force your workforce to always be, inundated with messages and video calls. So platform configurability, I briefly touched on platform. So again, it's important to have the ability not to just have a nice UX and UI, to not just have, before and after photos and geofencing and different kind of features and functionality, but to also have the ability to ingrain these things into workflows, into an event-driven architecture, and to then integrate this into other systems using things like RESTful APIs. So, if we're working, for instance, with smart meter vendors, they might have to do comms tests with various types of AMR equipment and different types of meters, right? And so it's important to have that integration while your technician is on site, where you can actually conduct that comms test seamlessly, right? But you can only do that when your applications were built with things like RESTful APIs using an open architecture, right? So getting a little bit, so I'm not going to go too deep into this slide because I could talk about this for 20 minutes, but this is what we call our architecture. And it just gives you an overview of our solution. The Isaac layer, which is intelligent service automation and control, is the heart of the solution. That's the underlying platform layer. This is where the AI lives. It's the database. It's what you need for app deployment. It's where you build your workflows. But our end users don't really see much of that. They don't really interface with that. It's the layer above, which are called the field service elements, where we basically have individual modules that are basically set up out of the box for you to quickly implement things like work order management, to have mobile workflows, to be able to schedule and dispatch through different scheduling and dispatching kind of cockpits using things like batch scheduling and JIT scheduling, asset management, custom dashboards, etc. But what's really interesting and kind of the power of the platform is that this side over here called Studio Z, which is actually our configuration suite, then allows you to go in, because we do own our own underlying platform layer. You can actually go in and customize these modules to your own liking. You can even build your own modules completely, and then create this top layer of customized solutions specifically for your organization. And then through connectors, when getting back into an open architecture, you can then also integrate data from IoT devices, traffic and weather conditions, and then pull that into the Isaac platform to then use recommendations, which is where our AI ML kind of comes into play, where we can say, hey, we're seeing a potential issue on this road here. You should reroute your technician over here. So then you end up with a very powerful solution where you can configure, modify workflows, you can build your own solutions, you can integrate with external data, and then learn from it through AI and ML to keep driving, towards this process of kind of continual improvement towards, the endless pursuit of perfection. So I'm almost done here with this section. This is just showing a view of our mobile page builder. So this is going into kind of that platform configuration layer that I was talking about. So you can see it's basically just drag and drop. It's low code. You have the ability to create buttons, photo uploads, QR scanners, commenting signatures, etc. Oh, and real quick, what's also interesting about this is, again, I kind of touched on this before, but if you modify something in a workflow, so if you add an additional field on your mobile app, so now you do have a customer signature at the end, for instance, because you've decided you want sign off for a certain type of job, you can actually modify that in the workflow. And as soon as that technician opens that in their app, that will be there. It does not require them to suddenly go back to the App Store to reinstall the entire application or make any changes on their end. They won't even notice that this new step's been added. It'll be seamless and just embedded within that workflow the next time that they conduct that type of job. And this is just showing at a deeper level. So this is, beyond the mobile app, this is the ability to build workflows all together. So they might cross into the web application. They might pull in data from integrations with external systems. They might go into mobile, but this is showing, the power of an event-driven architecture, where basically each one of these little squares here is really a node. And each one of these nodes in between, through AI and ML, we can actually predict, the probability of the next most likely outcome in each one of these nodes, and actually send recommendations saying, okay, there might be an issue here. We actually might need to chain another workflow here, reassign the task, cancel the task, etc. And it becomes very easy to do this, pulling in real-time data and making these quick kind of modifications through a recommendation engine when you have an event-driven architecture that allows you to build these nodes and workflows, right? Okay, so that basically wraps up my part. I think the next part is actually probably more interesting and what you all want to see. So I'm going to hand it over to our solution architect, Domingo, and we'll take it from there, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions. So take it away, Domingo, and thanks everybody.
Okay, perfect. So for those of you who are new, I'm gonna start setting up the context here. What you see here is the web application. And then, as Michael was saying, the field engineer would be using the mobile application, right? So usually how a simple process in Zinier goes is that a work order is created, let's say created manually or coming from an external system. Then the task or the work order needs to be scheduled to an engineer. Once the engineer receives the task in their phone, they can complete it, they capture all of the information, they go through all of the process, and then the task goes back to the web platform for the coordinators to review the results. They can approve the task, they can reject the task, and then a closeout package or a PDF can be automatically generated. In this point, of course, I'm going to be focusing on the mobile app experience, but I'm going to start as a scheduler, and I'm going to dispatch a task to an engineer. So what I have here, it's a corrective maintenance task. If I click here, I want you to know some things. First of all, the task, of course, has all of the information for the technician to complete it. But most importantly, here, you can see the schedule breakdown. In this case, this task is scheduled to be completed in 3 days. And what I'm going to show is that we don't want to wait for the job to be fully completed for the web coordinator to see some results or see what's happening in the field. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to select my technician here. In the previous webinar, we showed how we can do smart recommendations, but in this case, I already know that I want to add this to my technician, dispatch the task to the mobile application. Okay, so if we go here, what you see is the Zinier mobile application. And actually, yeah, so here I got a notification for a corrective maintenance. And then what I see here are all of the tasks that are assigned to myself. You can see that this task is scheduled to start today at 9 a.m. and finish on December 8th by 5 p.m. So the technician, what they would do is to open the task. Of course, they will see the task information, the location, dates, issue, what they have to solve. What we want to do here is to really have visibility of what's happening in the field. So just so that you have an overview, what I have is that first the technician will start traveling. Then they will check in the site when they arrive to their destination, and then they start capturing the data. And at any moment, they can report, Michael was saying, they can report delays, they can create corrective actions, etc. So I'm gonna go ahead here and start travel. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna be driving, and what's happening here is that now the engineer can the coordinator can actually see the updated status and the estimated time of arrival. So the next step would be to check in, but in this case, I'm gonna take a slightly different scenario. For example, let's say that the technician is traveling and they are stuck in traffic. So they have the ability to report an issue over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm having a travel incident. There is a roadblock, and I'm gonna say I'm stuck in traffic. 1 second, I'm stuck in traffic. Okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna take a photo essence. In this case, I'm just gonna take any photos. Okay, and I'm gonna say congestion. So basically, what I'm doing here is that I'm telling or letting know the web coordinator that I'm gonna be delayed for my task. And then the coordinator can take whatever action they want. So I'm gonna say I'm gonna be 60 minutes late, and I'm gonna submit this information for the web coordinator to review. So as you can see here, and as I was saying, we have many different options. We have the options, for example, to see the full task schedule, when I can see the task that I have to, sorry, the days and the time that I have to work in my task. I can report incidents, etc. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do the check-in. As Michael was saying, I have to be in the site to check in. So if I go here and click on the check-in button, and then I zoom out, here you can see that I have to be inside this radius to start my task, right? So I'm gonna say start check-in, and then now I can proceed with my task, correct? So submit check-in details. Well, then I'm gonna be starting my task. What you can see here is the task instructions. As I was saying, this task is scheduled to be completed in 3 days. I'm in the day 1. And here, basically, it's saying that I can submit progress by the end of the day, every day, so that the coordinator can see what's happening in the field. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go ahead here and capture a photo, let's say, of the broken equipment. As I want. Then I'm gonna go ahead to the next screen and start adding services. Services are basically the activity and perform in the field. In this case, I'm going to select the service type as repair work, okay? Then I can select an asset optionally to identify on which asset I'm working on. This site in particular has a smart, I'll be working on that one. I'm gonna capture the serial number. So I'm gonna capture this one over here. And then I can capture more photos. So I'm gonna take one more photo of the whole, for example, setup of things. Okay. Yeah, so okay, I'm gonna save the service. I can add as many services as I want. For example, as I was showing, I could do a safety check, an inspection, a site survey, whatever activity I want to perform. So what I will be doing now is that okay, so now I have these two options. I can submit the task progress or end the task. The main difference is if I click on submit task progress, then the information, as I said, will be fed back to web, but I'm gonna be able to continue with the task the day after, the next day, right? I suppose that if I click on end task, the information will also go back to the web platform, but in this case, it will be completed for me, so I won't be able to continue with it. For time purpose, I'm gonna just select on end task so that I can show you how a task looks on web. I'm gonna capture the last photo, but this time of the equipment that is fixed. So I'm gonna take the last photo. And then I'm gonna capture the client's signature. Note here that this is a basic and standard workflow, but as Miles showed in the workflow builder, we can customize all of these things. We can add components, we can add screens with new business rules, we can do many kind of modifications or even create new modes from scratch. So I'm gonna say this is approved by me. and I'm gonna proceed out. Basically, I'm saying I finished my work, and I'm gonna submit it. Okay, so as you can see here, the task is being synced. The data is being uploaded, and it's when it comes the seamless offline experience. I could have not had internet this whole time, and I wouldn't have even noticed. And then whenever I have internet connection again, the information will send back to the web application. So yeah, let's wait for this to be synced back to web, and then I'm going to go back to the web application. Okay, so I'm gonna go here now to the scheduler view, and all of these things that were happening on the mobile application can also be reviewed by the web user. For example, here I have the task that was previously delayed. If I go here and see the details, then I can go and check the incident reports. Sorry, the incident reports here. And here I can see that there was a travel block. I can see the evidence with the timestamp as Michael was showing. So all of the information is here. And then I can also act on these kind of things. So for example, I could recall task to schedule it to a different technician. I could cancel the task. Basically, depending on what the issues are, the web coordinator can perform different actions. But now I'm gonna go here and assume that the task was completed, and now check the results. So out of the box, here we have the ability to create reports either by dates or by services that were performed. If I say I select by date, in this case, there is only one day, but if there were multiple days, I can see each day what work was done. So I'm gonna say, yeah, so today's date, let's see what happens. So the technician captured the initial evidence of the broken equipment. Here we can very easily see the evidence. Then he also performed a repair work on a smart meter. And then we have the final evidence of the equipment that was fixed. That we can see that all of the information, it's actually pointing to the fact that the issue was solved. I can go ahead and approve the task. So I could also have I can also have or decide to reject a task. Then the task would go back to either to the same mobile engineer or to a different one, so that they can rectify whatever is missing or whatever they need to do. In this case, I'm going to approve the task. And Michael was saying, usually what happens with many of our customers is that the field engineer goes to the field, they complete the laptops and start uploading the data. So with Zinier, they wouldn't have to do that. And actually, that's a big benefit of why they would be using our platform, because when the task is completed and approved, then the PDF or the closeout package is automatically generated. So if I go here to completed work orders, I can see here the work order that I just completed. I'm gonna go ahead and download the closeout package. And then I can select which data I want to include the closeout package. So I'm gonna say, let's include the task progress report, initial evidence, the services, and the final evidence, basically all of the information. So I'm gonna click on download. And yeah, so let's give it a second. Okay, perfect. So it's here. I'm gonna go ahead and open it. Okay, so here you can see all of the information, then the photos that were captured, comments, basically all of the data that was captured by the mobile engineer, and then the signature. So yeah, that's everything from my side. And now I'm gonna give the space for anyone to ask questions.
Okay, thank you, Domingo. It looks like we have a few questions in already. So the first one is, if you have native apps across Android and iOS, how can you ensure the same user experience?
Okay, yeah, very good question. Yeah, so Michael showed in the workflow builder or in the page builder that we can do this drag and drop configuration of pages. We can define the processes, the business rules. The thing is that we only have metadata that the application generates is interpreted by either the iOS application or the Android application, and then the workflow or the screens are displayed in the mobile application. So in words, we have to define the screens and the workflow once, and then it's the job of the mobile application of our native apps with a good experience to display whatever needs to be displayed.
Okay, great. So the second one, how will the mobile workflows be affected if a site has no internet connectivity?
Okay, yeah. So as Michael was saying, there is no need to, for example, download the tasks before you go to the site. That happens seamlessly. Whenever the internet, the mobile app has internet connection, it will and then they can go to the site and complete the job. So we can assume that a technician, let's say by the beginning of the day, they will have internet connection. So then when they reach the site, they will seamlessly go through all of the screens and capture all of the information. And for example, if they report an incident, of course, there would be a delay because they don't have internet connection, and then and the communication is not possible. But then also the Zinier application store different timestamps. So even though the information may be delayed, then the time of occurrence won't be affected by that. We will still have traceability of at what time each action or event happened.
Thank you very much, Domingo. We have a third one. What happens if the app crashes during a task?
Okay, the app shouldn't crash, but okay, let's say it crashes. Okay, so the data that is being captured, if it's not synced to the server yet, then it will be stored locally. So if the app crashes, it won't affect the technician experience. The data will still be there. They won't lose data. But at the same time, if the task is submitted and yeah, if the task is submitted and information uploaded, then the information will no longer be in the mobile device. So this means that even though the information is stored locally in the device, when it's submitted, we don't need to keep, let's say, import like sensitive information on the technician's devices. For example, the data that was captured or the photos.
Thank you, Domingo. It looks like we've covered all of our questions, and thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time. Thank you.